Homeless boy saved a biker's daughter from a house fire. What the Hells Angels did next changed everything. For 3 years, Marcus Cole survived on the streets by staying invisible. No family, no home. Just a 12-year-old kid who'd learned that the safest thing to do was disappear into the background and never draw attention. Then, one Tuesday night in June, he heard screaming coming from a burning house. A little girl trapped on the second floor. Firefighters are 8 minutes away, and Marcus made a choice that defied every survival instinct he'd spent years perfecting. What he did in the next 90 seconds saved a life. But what a Hells Angels president did 24 hours later, that's the part that'll leave you speechless. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are watching from in the comments. Enjoy the story. Help! Somebody help! The scream cut through the quiet Sparks, Nevada, neighborhood like a blade through silk. Sharp, desperate, unmistakable. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in June, the kind of warm summer night where people had their windows open, where sounds carried farther than they should. Marcus Cole heard it from 2 blocks away. He'd been walking toward his usual spot behind the grocery store on Mill Street, a place where the dumpsters were regularly stocked, and the staff didn't chase him off as long as he stayed quiet. His backpack hung loose on his thin shoulders, containing everything he owned in the world. 2 changes of clothes, a water bottle, a flashlight with dying batteries, and a photograph of his mother that was so worn the edges had gone soft. He was 12 years old, and he'd been homeless for 3 years. 3 years had passed since the system had failed him one too many times. 3 years since he'd decided that foster care roulette was worse than taking his chances on his own. 3 years of perfecting the art of invisibility, of being the kid nobody noticed, nobody questioned, nobody remembered. But that scream made him stop dead in the middle of the sidewalk. His head snapped toward the sound, his body going rigid with attention. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Marcus took off running. Not away from the sound, toward it. His worn sneakers slapped against pavement as he sprinted through residential streets he'd mapped 100 times before. Left on 5th, right on Maple, straight through the alley behind the medical clinic. And then he saw it. Orange light flickering against the night sky. Smoke billowed upward in thick black columns that blotted out the stars. A 2-story house fully engulfed, flames pouring from the lower windows, eating through the structure with terrifying speed. A crowd had already gathered on the street, neighbors in pajamas and bathrobes, standing at a safe distance, phones raised, some calling 911, others just recording because that's what people do now. They document tragedy from a safe distance. Marcus pushed through them, his eyes scanning, his mind processing. And that's when he heard it again. The scream. But this time it wasn't coming from the street. It was coming from inside the house. Second floor. A child's voice, high and panicked and running out of time. My daughter. A woman's voice, ragged and breaking, somewhere in the crowd. She's still inside. Lily's still inside. Marcus didn't think. Thinking would have stopped him. Thinking would have reminded him that he was just a kid, that he had no training, that running into a burning building was suicide, that his first responsibility was to himself because nobody else was going to take care of him. But thinking doesn't happen in moments like this. In moments like this, your body moves before your brain catches up. Marcus dropped his backpack on the lawn and ran toward the house. Someone grabbed at his arm. A man, older, trying to pull him back. Kid, no. The fire department's coming. Marcus yanked his arm free. She doesn't have time. He hit the front door at a dead run. The wood was already hot to the touch, the paint blistering and bubbling. He turned the handle, unlocked, and shoved it open. Heat blasted him backward like a physical force, a wall of superheated air that made his lungs scream in protest. The first floor was lost, completely consumed. Flames crawled across the ceiling, dripped down walls, devoured furniture with methodical hunger. Black smoke so thick that Marcus couldn't see 3 feet in front of him. The air tasted like burning plastic and chemicals and death. But somewhere above him, a little girl was screaming. Marcus pulled his shirt up over his nose and mouth, a pathetic filter that would do almost nothing, and moved toward the stairs. If you've ever had to make a choice between safety and doing what's right, hit that subscribe button. Because what Marcus is about to do defies everything we think we know about survival. The stairs were wooden, old, already starting to buckle under the heat. Marcus took them two at a time, his hand sliding along the banister for guidance since he couldn't see through the smoke. Each step groaned beneath his weight. Each breath felt like inhaling broken glass. "Where are you?" Marcus shouted, his voice muffled by his shirt, barely audible over the roar of fire consuming the house around him. "Here. I'm here." The voice came from somewhere to his right. Upstairs hallway. Marcus moved toward it, crouched low where the air was slightly clearer, his eyes burning, tears streaming down his face. He found her in the second bedroom. 7 years old, Lily Chun pressed into the corner farthest from the door, her small body shaking with terror and smoke inhalation. Her eyes were wide, reflecting orange firelight, her face streaked with soot and tears. Marcus didn't waste words. He crossed the room in 3 strides, scooped her up. She weighed almost nothing, and turned back toward the hallway. But the path he'd just taken was gone. The fire had spread in those 15 seconds. Flames blocked the doorway now, crawling along the ceiling, dropping down in curtains of heat that made Marcus's skin feel like it was cooking. "Hold on to me," Marcus told Lily, his voice surprisingly calm despite the panic screaming in every nerve. "Don't let go." She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder. Marcus looked around desperately. The window. It was their only option. He crossed to it, used his elbow to smash through the glass. Pain, sharp and immediate, blood running down his arm, and knocked away the remaining shards. The drop was 15 feet. Onto grass, hopefully soft grass, but 15 feet is still 15 feet. Marcus didn't hesitate. He climbed onto the window frame, Lily still clinging to him, and jumped. They hit the ground hard. Marcus twisted at the last second to take the impact on his side, protecting Lily from the fall. His shoulder hit first, then his hip, pain exploding through his body in ways he'd never experienced. He rolled, came to a stop on the front lawn, and immediately checked on the girl. "Are you okay? Lily, are you hurt?" She was coughing, choking on smoke she'd inhaled, but she was alive, conscious, moving. Marcus pulled her farther from the house, away from the heat and falling debris, toward the crowd of neighbors who'd watched the entire thing happen. The woman, Lily's mother, Sarah Chun, broke through the crowd and fell to her knees beside them, pulling her daughter into her arms with the kind of desperate gratitude that has no words. She was sobbing, clutching Lily as she'd never let go, checking her face, her arms, her body for injuries. And then she looked at Marcus. This skinny, smoke-covered kid with burns on his arms and blood dripping from his elbow, sitting on her lawn as he'd just done the most normal thing in the world. "You saved her," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking completely. "You saved my daughter." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He'd never saved anyone before. He'd spent 3 years just trying to save himself. So he just nodded, stood up on shaky legs, and started backing away toward the street. Because that's what invisible kids do. They disappear before questions get asked, before police arrive, before anyone can look too closely at a 12-year-old with no adults, no home, no explanations. But Marcus didn't make it 3 steps before his legs gave out completely. The adrenaline crash hit him all at once. His vision blurred, his lungs screamed from smoke inhalation, and his body finally registered every injury he'd ignored during the rescue. He collapsed onto the grass, consciousness slipping away like water through his fingers. The last thing he heard before everything went dark was sirens. Ambulance, fire trucks, police. All arriving too late to save Lily, but just in time to save him. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known as paramedics loaded him onto a stretcher and rushed him toward the hospital, was that Sarah Chun wasn't just any mother. She was married to a man named Tommy Reaper Chun, and Reaper was the president of the Sparks chapter of the Hells Angels. Marcus woke up in a hospital room that he couldn't afford. The first thing he felt was pain, sharp, persistent, everywhere. His lungs burned with every breath. His shoulder throbbed where he'd hit the ground. His arms were wrapped in bandages covering burns he didn't remember getting. The second thing he felt was panic. Hospitals meant questions. Questions meant the authorities. Authorities meant foster care or juvenile facilities or any number of systems designed to help kids like him, but rarely did. He tried to sit up, to pull the 4 from his arm, to get out of this bed and back to the streets, where at least he controlled his own fate. But his body refused to cooperate. Everything hurt too much, moved too slowly. The door opened. Marcus tensed, preparing for a social worker or a police officer or someone who'd want to know why a 12-year-old was alone, where his parents were, why he had no address or guardian or anyone who'd claimed him yet. But it wasn't a social worker. It was a man, big, broad-shouldered, wearing a black leather vest covered in patches and pins. His arms were sleeved with tattoos, his face weathered by decades of sun and roads and life. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between concern and something harder to define. Tommy, Reaper. Chin stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. He pulled a chair close to Marcus's bed, sat down heavily, and studied the boy with dark eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. Marcus stared back, trying to keep his face neutral, trying not to show the fear creeping up his spine. He knew what motorcycle clubs were. He'd seen them on the streets, heard the rumors, learned early that some groups were dangerous and unpredictable. But Reaper didn't look angry. He looked tired and sad, and something else Marcus couldn't quite identify. "You're awake," Reaper said finally. His voice was deep, gravelly, the kind that rumbled in your chest when he spoke. "Good. Doctors said you'd be fine. Smoke inhalation, some burns, and bruised ribs. You'll heal." Marcus didn't respond. Silence was safer than words. Words gave information, created connections, and made you visible. Reaper leaned back in his chair, still watching. "You saved my daughter last night. Ran into a burning house, while everyone else stood around recording it on their phones. You saved Lily when I wasn't there to do it myself." Still, Marcus said nothing. His eyes flicked toward the door, calculating distances, escape routes, possibilities. "You got a name, kid?" "Marcus," he said quietly. Giving up his first name felt safer than refusing to answer entirely. "Marcus," Reaper repeated, testing it. "I'm Tommy, but most people call me Reaper. You know why they call me that?" Marcus shook his head. "Because I collect debts." Reaper's expression was completely serious. "When someone owes me something, I make sure they pay. One way or another, debts get settled." Marcus's heart rate spiked. The monitor beside his bed betrayed him, beeping faster. But then Reaper's face softened, just slightly. "The thing is, Marcus, I owe you a debt. A big one. The kind I can't repay with money or favors or anything simple. You gave me back my daughter. You gave my wife back her child. You gave Lily her future. That's not a debt I take lightly." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said quickly. I heard her screaming. "Anyone would have." "No," Reaper interrupted, his voice firm. "Anyone wouldn't have. Everyone else stood there. You ran in. There's a difference." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. In his experience, doing the right thing usually made your life harder, not better. Helping people meant drawing attention, and attention meant losing the invisibility that kept him safe. "The hospital wants to release you tomorrow," Reaper continued. "They called Child Protective Services. Standard procedure for a minor with no guardians. CPS will be here in the morning to take you into custody." Marcus's stomach dropped. He'd been in the system before. Bounced between 6 different foster homes in the 2 years after his mother died. Some homes were just indifferent. Some were actively bad. None of them were places a kid could actually heal or build a life. So he'd run. And he'd been running for 3 years. "I'm not going back," Marcus said, his voice harder now. "I'll leave tonight. I'll be gone before they show up." "With a punctured lung and 3rd-degree burns?" Reaper raised an eyebrow. "You'll make it maybe 6 blocks before you collapse again." He wasn't wrong. Marcus knew that. His body was wrecked. But desperation made you stubborn. Reaper leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his eyes locked on Marcus with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. I got a different idea. You come home with me. Marcus blinked. What? You heard me. I talked to my wife. We talked to our club. You saved our daughter. That makes you family. Family doesn't go into the system. Family comes home. I'm not. Marcus started, but Reaper held up a hand. You're 12 years old. You've been living on the streets for 3 years. Don't try to tell me you've got other options, because we both know you don't. You need a home. We've got one. You need people who'll look out for you. We've got plenty. You want to stay invisible and keep surviving on your own? Fine. Walk out that door tomorrow. But if you want something different, if you want to actually live instead of just survive, then you come with me. If this is hitting you in the chest, comment, Marcus deserves this. And subscribe if you believe second chances should be real, not just something we talk about. Marcus stared at him, trying to find the angle, the catch, the hidden cost. Nobody offered something this big without wanting something back. That's how the world worked. But Reaper's face showed nothing except sincerity and a debt he was determined to settle. Why? Marcus asked quietly. Why would you do this? Reaper was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice softer than before. Because 30 years ago, I was you. Different circumstances, same situation. Homeless kid, no family, trying to survive alone. And someone gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one. Saved my life. So now I pass it forward. That's how it works in my world. Someone saves you. You save someone else. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Something that had been frozen solid for 3 years, protected by walls he'd built brick by brick to keep hope from hurting him again. What if I mess it up? Marcus whispered. What if I don't fit? What if? Then we figure it out together, Reaper said simply. That's what families do. The next morning, when the social worker arrived with her clipboard and her sympathetic smile and her plans to place Marcus into emergency foster care, she found an empty hospital room. Marcus had already been discharged into the care of Tommy and Sarah Chun. Legal guardianship papers filed. Background checks expedited. Everything proper and official and impossible to argue with. Marcus walked out of that hospital wearing clean clothes that actually fit, flanked by Reaper on one side and Sarah on the other, with little Lily holding his hand and refusing to let go. He had a family now, whether he was ready for it or not. Reaper's house wasn't what Marcus expected. From the outside, it looked normal. A modest 2-story home in a quiet Sparks neighborhood, with a small yard and a garage that barely fits one car. Nothing intimidating. Nothing that screamed, "Motorcycle Club President lives here." But inside, it was clear this was a home built on motorcycles and brotherhood. Framed photos of road trips lined the hallways. Patches and pins from different chapters covered a bulletin board in the kitchen. A wall in the living room displayed various motorcycle parts turned into art. Handlebars, exhaust pipes, gears welded into sculptures. Sarah showed Marcus to his room. Not a guest room, not a temporary space, but his room. She'd set it up the night before, after Reaper had come home from the hospital and told her about his decision. It had a bed with clean sheets, a desk, a dresser, and a window that overlooked the backyard. Basic furniture, nothing fancy, but it was more than Marcus had owned in 3 years combined. You can decorate however you want, Sarah said, standing in the doorway. Paint the walls, put up posters, whatever makes it feel like yours. Just make it home, okay? Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. He set his backpack down on the bed, that same worn backpack that contained everything he'd owned for 3 years, and it looked pathetically small in the space. Sarah noticed. We'll get you more clothes tomorrow, and shoes, and whatever else you need for school. School. Marcus's head snapped up. You're 12, Sarah said gently. Of course, school. The summer session starts next week. We'll get you enrolled. Marcus hadn't been to school in 3 years. He'd taught himself to read better using discarded newspapers and library books during the hours libraries were open. He'd learned math by calculating distances and counting money and figuring out how to make $3 stretch across 2 days. But formal school, with teachers and classrooms and other kids who'd ask questions about where he lived and who his parents were, That terrified him more than the burning house had. Sarah must have seen it on his face because she sat down on the edge of his new bed and looked at him with the same gentle firmness she probably used on Lily. Marcus, I know this is overwhelming. I know you've spent 3 years learning not to trust people, not to depend on anyone, not to let yourself hope for things that might disappear. But you're not alone anymore. You're part of this family now. That means we're going to push you, challenge you, make you uncomfortable sometimes, because that's how you grow. But it also means we're not going anywhere. You understand? Marcus nodded again, still not speaking. Lily hasn't stopped talking about you, Sarah continued, her voice softening. She keeps telling everyone at her school that a superhero saved her from the fire. She drew you a picture. Want to see it? Before Marcus could respond, Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. It was a child's drawing, done in crayon, showing a stick figure boy with a cape pulling a smaller stick figure out of a house covered in red and orange scribbles. At the top, in uneven letters, it said, "Marcus is my hero." Something inside Marcus broke completely. He'd spent 3 years building walls, staying invisible, convincing himself that needing people was weakness, that attachment led to pain. But looking at that drawing, seeing proof that his choice to run into that fire had mattered, that he'd actually saved someone, that someone saw him as more than just a homeless kid to ignore, it shattered every defense he had left. Tears hit his cheeks before he even realized he was crying. Not quiet tears either, but the kind that come from somewhere deep, from 3 years of holding everything in, from being so tired of being alone. Sarah pulled him into a hug without asking permission, and Marcus let her, which was maybe the bravest thing he'd done since running into that fire. Integration into the Chun family happened faster than Marcus expected. The first morning, he woke up at 5:30 a.m. out of habit. Streets taught you to wake early, before the world got busy, when you could move unseen. He lay in bed for 20 minutes, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to realize they'd made a mistake, for the dream to end. But instead, he smelled coffee brewing, heard movement in the kitchen, the comfortable sounds of a family waking up. Marcus got dressed, the same clothes from yesterday since they were all he had, and crept downstairs, trying to be quiet, trying not to intrude. Reaper was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee and a motorcycle magazine. He looked up when Marcus appeared in the doorway. "You eat breakfast?" Reaper asked, no preamble, just direct. "Sometimes," Marcus admitted. "Not anymore. In this house, you eat 3 meals a day. Sarah's rule, not mine. But I agree with it. You're too skinny." Sarah appeared from the hallway, already dressed for work, her hair still damp from the shower. She worked as a paralegal at a law firm downtown, Reaper had explained last night. She saw Marcus and smiled. "Morning, honey. How'd you sleep?" The casual endearment made Marcus's chest tight. "Honey," like it was natural, like he belonged. "Good," he managed. "Really good." Breakfast was scrambled eggs, toast, and orange juice. Simple, normal, the kind of meal families eat every day without thinking about it. But Marcus ate slowly, carefully, like he was afraid it might disappear if he rushed. Lily came downstairs last, still in her pajamas, her hair a mess, her face lighting up when she saw Marcus at the table. "You're still here," she said, delighted, like she'd worried overnight that he might vanish. "I'm still here," Marcus confirmed. She climbed into the chair beside him and immediately started chattering about her plans for the day, about the picture she'd drawn, about how she wanted to show him her favorite playground later. Marcus listened, nodding at appropriate moments, still adjusting to the fact that conversation was expected now, that he didn't have to stay quiet and invisible. After breakfast, Reaper stood up and gestured for Marcus to follow. "Come on. Got something to show you." They went to the garage. Reaper hit a button, and the door rolled up, revealing what could only be described as a temple to motorcycles. 2 bikes sat there, both meticulously maintained, chrome gleaming even in the dim light. Tools hung, organized on pegboards. Parts were sorted into labeled bins. The floor was so clean you could eat off it. Reaper walked to the far bike, a beautiful Harley-Davidson Softail, and ran his hand along the seat with obvious affection. "This is mine," he said. "Built her from the frame up. Took me 3 years, but she's perfect now." Then he moved to the second bike, smaller, older, clearly mid-restoration. "This one's a project. 1978 Harley Sportster. Found it in a junkyard. Been working on it when I have time. Engine's rebuilt, transmission's good, but the electrical system's shot and the bodywork needs attention." He looked at Marcus. "You know anything about motorcycles?" "No," Marcus admitted. "You want to learn?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Learning meant purpose. Purpose meant belonging. "Good," Reaper said. "Because I could use help with this restoration. If you're interested, I'll teach you. Mechanics, electrical, bodywork, everything. But it's real work. You show up, you pay attention, you get your hands dirty." "Deal." "Deal," Marcus said immediately. Reaper smiled, just slightly. "You'll start today? But first, we're going shopping. You need clothes and shoes. Then we're stopping by the clubhouse. The brothers want to meet you." The Sparks Hells Angels clubhouse was nothing like Marcus imagined. He'd expected something dark and threatening, filled with dangerous men doing dangerous things. But when Reaper's truck pulled into the parking lot, what Marcus saw was a large building that looked more like a community center than a den of outlaws. Motorcycles lined the front, dozens of them, all shapes and sizes, all immaculate. Music played from inside, something classic rock that Marcus didn't recognize. And when they walked through the door, the space opened into a large common room with pool tables, a bar, comfortable furniture, and walls covered in photographs and memorabilia. Men and women were scattered throughout. Some playing pool, some sitting at tables talking, some working on laptops, some just hanging out. They all wore the same leather vests, all bearing the Hells Angels patches, the red and white colors that Marcus had only ever seen from a distance. When Reaper entered with Marcus beside him, the conversation stopped. All eyes turned toward them. Marcus felt his survival instincts kick in, the urge to run, to disappear, to get out before he became the center of attention. But Reaper's hand settled on his shoulder. Firm, grounding, a reminder that he wasn't alone. "Brothers," Reaper's voice carried across the room. "This is Marcus, the kid who pulled Lily out of the fire. He's family now. Anyone got a problem with that?" The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds. Then a woman near the bar stood up. She was in her 40s, muscular, with short dark hair and sleeve tattoos. Her vest identified her as road captain. She walked straight up to Marcus and extended her hand. "Name's Diesel," she said. "Thanks for saving one of ours. That makes you one of ours, too." Marcus shook her hand, and then it was like a dam broke. One by one, the brothers and sisters approached. Each one introduced themselves. Each one shook his hand. Each one welcomed him, not with pity or condescension, but with respect. A younger guy named Ace, maybe mid-20s, clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "Heard you ran into a burning building without hesitation. That's the bravest thing I've seen anyone do this year." An older biker called Wrench, who must have been in his 60s, nodded approvingly. Kid's got heart. That matters more than anything. They weren't treating him like a charity case. They were treating him like someone who'd proven himself, who'd earned their respect through action, not words. If you're getting chills, hit that like button. If you believe communities like this are what the world needs more of, comment brotherhood below. Reaper let the introductions continue for about 10 minutes, then called for attention again. "All right, listen up. We're going to do something we haven't done in 15 years. We're going to vote on honorary membership for a minor." The room went quiet again, but this time with interest rather than surprise. "Marcus saved my daughter's life," Reaper continued. "That earns him a place in this family. But it's not just my decision. It's all of ours. So I'm putting it to a vote. All in favor of making Marcus an honorary member of this chapter, giving him our protection, our support, and our resources, say aye." The response was unanimous. "Aye." Reaper looked at Marcus. "Welcome to the family, kid." Official. Diesel disappeared into a back room and returned with something folded in her hands. She shook it out. A leather vest, much smaller than the ones the adults wore, clearly made for a kid. but it bore the same patches, the same colors, the same insignia. "We had this made yesterday," she explained, holding it up. "Honorary patch for young family members. You wear this, and everyone knows you're protected. Everyone knows you belong." She helped Marcus put it on. The leather was stiff and new, not yet broken in by miles or weather. It fit perfectly, and when Marcus looked down at himself, at the Hells Angels insignia across his back, something fundamental shifted in his identity. For 3 years, he'd been nobody. A ghost. A kid who didn't exist in any official capacity. But now he was somebody. He had a name, a family, protection, and belonging. He was Marcus Chun, and he was home. But the story didn't stop with Marcus finding a family. It started a movement. For months after Marcus moved in with the Chins, another fire broke out across town. Different house, different circumstances, but same result. A child trapped, screaming for help. This time, it was Ace who ran in. Ace, the 25-year-old biker who'd welcomed Marcus to the clubhouse that first day, heard the screams while riding past, and didn't hesitate. He kicked down a door, navigated smoke and flames, and carried out a 9-year-old boy seconds before the roof collapsed. When the local news covered it, the reporter asked Ace why he'd risked his life. His answer was simple: "A kid showed me how. If a 12-year-old can run into a fire to save someone, what's my excuse?" The clip went viral. 2 million views in 3 days. And suddenly, the Hells Angels Sparks chapter was getting attention for something other than stereotypes about motorcycle clubs. Letters started arriving at the clubhouse. Then emails. Then phone calls. People thanking them. People asking questions. People wanting to know more about that club that takes in homeless kids and those bikers who run into burning buildings. Reaper called a meeting. The entire chapter gathered in the clubhouse, Marcus included now, sitting in the back and listening as the adults discussed what to do with all this unexpected positive attention. "We could start a formal program," Diesel suggested. "Use the publicity to fundraise, create something sustainable." "We're not a charity," someone objected. "We're a motorcycle club." "We're both," Reaper said firmly. "We've always helped people. We've always taken care of our community. Maybe it's time we make it official." The vote was close, but it passed. They called it the Marcus Protocol, named after the kid who'd started it all without meaning to. It wasn't a foster care system. It wasn't a group home. It was something different. A network of brotherhood families willing to take in kids who'd fallen through the cracks, kids who needed protection and stability, and people who'd fight for them. Within 6 months, 5 more children found homes within the chapter. Within a year, other Hells Angels chapters across the country were calling to ask how to implement similar programs. Marcus watched it happen with something between pride and disbelief. He hadn't meant to start anything. He'd just heard a little girl screaming and couldn't walk away. But sometimes the smallest acts of courage create ripples that change everything. 2 years later, Marcus stood in the garage working on that Sportster restoration with Reaper. He was 14 now. Taller, stronger, no longer the skeletal kid who'd collapsed on a lawn after saving Lily. He wore his vest everywhere, to school, to the store, to family dinners at the clubhouse. It had become part of his identity. The Sportster project was nearly finished. They'd spent hundreds of hours on it together, Reaper teaching Marcus everything he knew about engines and electrical systems and the patience required to restore something broken into something beautiful. "Hand me that torque wrench," Reaper said, focused on adjusting the engine timing. Marcus passed it over without hesitation. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from spending time together without needing to fill every moment with words. Finally, Reaper straightened up and wiped his hands on a rag. "We're done. She's ready to run." "Already?" Marcus looked at the bike in surprise. They'd been working on it for 2 years. "Already," Reaper confirmed. He walked to the wall and grabbed a helmet, then tossed it to Marcus. "Put that on." "Why?" "Because this bike's yours. Built it for you. You're going to ride it." Marcus froze, the helmet in his hands, staring at Reaper in complete shock. "What?" "You heard me. It's yours. Happy early 15th birthday." "But I can't. I'm not old enough to." "For a license, no? But you can ride in parking lots and on private property. And I'm going to teach you how. By the time you're 16 and legal, you'll be the best rider in this chapter. Marcus looked at the motorcycle, this machine they'd spent 2 years carefully restoring together, and realized it wasn't just a bike. It was a lesson. It was proof that broken things can be fixed. That patience and effort can transform something worthless into something valuable. That he was worth the investment. If this story proved that family is about choice, not blood, share this video. If you believe every kid deserves someone willing to fight for them, subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you, Marcus whispered, his voice catching. Don't thank me, Reaper said. You earned it. You worked on this bike every weekend for 2 years. You learned every system, every part. You showed up, you paid attention, you put in the effort. That's what earns things in this family. Not charity. Work. Commitment. Showing up. Marcus nodded, blinking back tears he wasn't quite ready to shed. Besides, Reaper added, his voice softening. You saved my daughter. This is me saying thank you, the only way I know how. Today, 3 years after that fire, the Marcus Protocol operates in 12 Hells Angels chapters across the United States. 87 children who'd been homeless, abandoned, or lost in broken systems now have families. Not because of government programs or nonprofit organizations, but because one 12-year-old boy ran into a burning house and showed a community of motorcycle clubs what real courage looks like. Marcus is 15 now. He's on the honor roll at Sparks High School. He volunteers at the local fire department on weekends. He mentors younger kids in the program, sharing his story, showing them that survival isn't the end goal. Living with purpose is. Lily is 10 now. She and Marcus are inseparable. She still draws pictures of him, still tells everyone her big brother is a hero, still refuses to go anywhere without making sure he'll be there too. Sarah and Reaper? They have 2 kids now. One they gave birth to, one they chose. And they'll tell you without hesitation that choosing Marcus was one of the best decisions they've ever made. The motorcycle club that society told you to fear? They've saved more children than most government programs in Nevada. They've given homes to kids nobody else wanted. They've proven that family isn't about blood or paperwork or traditional structures. It's about showing up. It's about choosing to love someone when they need it most. And it all started because a 12-year-old homeless boy heard screaming and decided that staying invisible wasn't worth a child's life. But here's the part that'll destroy you in the best way possible. Last month, Marcus graduated from the Fire Academy's junior program. At 15, he's the youngest person in Nevada history to complete it. He can't officially work as a firefighter until he's 18, but he's already trained, already certified, already preparing. When they asked him why he wanted to become a firefighter, his answer was simple. Someone has to run toward the fire. Might as well be me. The ceremony was held at the Sparks Fire Department. The entire Hells Angels chapter showed up. Dozens of motorcycles lined the parking lot. Leather-clad bikers filled the ceremony hall, sitting beside firefighters and city officials and families. When Marcus's name was called, when he walked across that stage to receive his certificate, the applause was thunderous. But it wasn't just the bikers cheering. It was everyone. Because everyone in that room understood what this moment represented. A homeless kid who'd survived 3 years on the streets had just become the first person to run toward danger when everyone else ran away. And now he was training to make that his life's work. Reaper stood in the back of the room, Sarah beside him, Lily between them. He had his arm around his wife, his daughter holding his hand, watching the boy he'd chosen to save 3 years ago become the man he was always meant to be. Sarah leaned close and whispered, "We did good, didn't we?" Reaper nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Because good didn't even begin to cover it. After the ceremony, Marcus stood outside with his certificate, surrounded by brothers and sisters from the club, all of them congratulating him, all of them proud in ways that didn't require words. Lily ran up and threw her arms around his waist. "You're still my hero," she said fiercely. Marcus knelt down to her level, the way he always did when she wanted to tell him something important. "And you're still the reason I'm here," he said. I saved you once. But you and your family saved me every day after that. Diesel approached with something in her hands, a new patch for his vest. It was custom-made, small and detailed, a flame with wings, and underneath it, the words, "First in, last out." "For the kid who runs toward fires," she said, pinning it to his vest. "Honorary member isn't enough anymore. You're the full family now. Always have been. If you're crying, you're not alone." Comment, Marcus is a hero, if this story moved you. Share this with someone who needs to remember that one moment of courage can change everything. Marcus looked around at these people, his family, and realized something profound. 3 years ago, he'd been invisible. Nobody saw him. Nobody knew his name. Nobody cared if he existed or not. But he'd made one choice. One single choice to run toward screaming instead of away from it. And that choice had given him everything. A home, a family, a purpose, a future, an identity. He thought he was saving Lily that night. What he didn't know was that saving her would save him, too. The fire that started everything is gone now. The Chun family's old house was demolished after the investigation concluded. Too much structural damage to repair. Too many memories of nearly losing everything that mattered. But on the vacant lot where it once stood, the Sparks Hells Angels chapter built something new. Not a house. A memorial. A small park with benches and trees, and a plaque that reads, "In honor of Marcus Cole, who taught us that heroes don't need capes or training or permission. They just need courage and a reason to run toward danger when others run away. May we all be brave enough to choose love over safety when it matters most." Marcus visits sometimes, sits on the bench, remembers that night. The heat, the smoke, the fear, the choice that changed his life forever. Lily usually comes with him. She's older now, but she still holds his hand. They sit together in comfortable silence, two people bound by fire and family and a moment that neither of them will ever forget. "Do you ever regret it?" Lily asked him once. "Running in that night? You could have died." Marcus thought about it, then shook his head. "No, because if I hadn't, I never would have found home. Sometimes the scariest thing you can do is exactly what you're meant to do." Lily squeezed his hand tighter. "I'm glad you're my brother. I'm glad you're my sister," Marcus replied. And that was the truth. The whole truth. Nothing else needed to be said. This story proves something the world keeps trying to forget. That family is built, not born. That love is a choice you make every single day. That the people society tells you to fear might be exactly the people who will save you when everyone else walks away. The Hells Angels Marcus protocol is still growing. Last count. 87 children in 12 chapters across the country. 87 kids who'd been written off by the system now have homes, families, protection, futures. 87 lives changed because one kid refused to stay invisible. If you believe stories like this need to be shared, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I find these stories to remind you that humanity is still good, that heroes are real, and that sometimes miracles start with one person making one brave choice. Comment, "Every child deserves a family," if this story changed how you see the world. Share this video with someone who needs hope today. And remember, the next time you hear someone screaming for help, the next time you see someone who's invisible and forgotten, the next time you have a choice between safety and doing what's right, think of Marcus. Think of a 12-year-old boy who had nothing but gave everything. Because that's what heroes do. They show up. They run toward the fire. They choose love over fear. And they change the world one brave choice at a time.